In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a snap pouch. Now, this is my 2.0 version. I've made this tutorial before, but this time we're adding a little D-ring to the side, which just makes it look a little bit fancier. Plus, you could clip it onto something or maybe clip a charm onto it. I think these are really great little gift ideas, and I think once you make one, you'll want to make a whole heap more because they're just so quick and easy to make. If you're new here, my name's Stacey. Thanks so much for joining me. Let me show you how to make a snap pouch. To make this project, you're going to need two pieces of fabric that measure 5 inches by 8 inches. I'm using both of the same fabrics, but you could always use a different fabric for the lining. Then we need another piece of fabric that measures 2 inches by 2 inches, a piece of interfacing that's actually 1/2 inch smaller than our fabric, so that's 4.5 inches by 7.5 inches, and then we have a 1/2 inch D-ring. You can find a copy of all the supplies required over on my website. I'll put a link down in the description below. Plus you'll need a snap set. I forgot to put it here, but we will need one snap set. For my interfacing, I'm using Heat and Bond soft woven fusible. Just use whatever you've got on hand, and depending on the thickness of your interfacing will just make your snap pouch be more structured. So what I'm going to do is, it's got a bumpy side. I'm going to place that down on the wrong side of my fabric in the center. Now we did cut it 1/2 inch smaller than our fabric, so you'll see I can see the fabric popping out. I just want to make sure it's in the center, so I've got about 1/4 inch of the fabric I can see underneath the interfacing there. Once I'm happy that it's centered, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I'm just going to press it, which melts that glue. And I will just turn it over and give it a press on this side too. We want it to be adhered really well because it just makes it easier when we're turning it right sides out, and it just sits a whole heap nicer. Okay, let's move on to the next step. So now what we're going to do is measure the center of our top. So I'm just going to take my ruler. Now our piece measured 5 inches, so the center is going to be 2.5 inches. So I'm just going to put a little dot right there at the very top center. And then on each side, I'm just going to measure 1 inch down and just do a little dot right on the edge there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line from our 1 inch down mark to our center and then down to the other side. Then what I'm going to do is, on the right hand side, I'm just going to measure 5 inches up from the bottom. So just finding the 5 inch mark on my ruler, lining it up on the bottom there, and just measuring 5 inches here on the side. Now that we've done all our measurements, we're going to do our D-ring strap. Now, if you don't want to do a D-ring, it's completely optional. You can just skip this part. So with our 2 inch by 2 inch piece, we're going to fold it in half, right, wrong sides that is, together, and press. Then we're going to open it up, and the raw edges, we're going to fold them into the fold that we just pressed. And I'll give that a press, and I'll do the same on this side. So both our raw edges are meeting up in the middle. Then I'm going to fold it back in half again and give it another press. Now we're just going to stitch down each side of our strap. So it's so little, I'm not going to worry about pins. I'm going to sew with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm using my left compensating foot, which gives me a really nice finish. But just use whatever guide you need to get that seam allowance. And I'm just going to start on the side that we're closing, and I'm going to stitch at stitch length 3, and I'm using wonderful confetti thread. Coming off the very edge, cutting my thread, and I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. This is just decorative really, and I think it looks nicer when it's been sewn on both sides. I'm going to pop my D-ring on, fold it in half. You could check that you're happy with the fabric that it's showing. I think it will look nice with that side. I could open it up and check that if that side would be better, but I'm happy with this side. Then I'm just going to fold it back in half, line up these edges here, and then sew along this edge just to keep it all together. I'm not going to worry about changing my foot because it's just really to hold them together nicely when we sew our pouch together. Okay, I'm going to cut my thread, and then I'm just going to trim off all these loose threads just to keep it tidy. So for our strap, I just want to measure a 1/4 inch line to help us line it up nicely. So I'm just going to take my ruler, find the 1/4 inch mark, and roll a nice straight line along the edge there. That's going to help us with our next step. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my 2 pieces of fabric right sides together, make sure all my edges are lined up nicely, and then I'm just going to pin it in place. But when I put my pins in here, I'm going to make sure they're not in the way of those blue lines, because we're going to trim that excess. Actually, I'm just going to put them in on the side there like that. Then what we're going to do is, now that the pieces are pinned together nicely, we're just going to trim along the lines that we drew earlier. So just taking my scissors and carefully cutting, making sure we cut both those layers. Okay, now what we're going to do is take our D-ring piece, and we've got our little line there, and we've got our little dot that we drew earlier. We're just going to pop it in between the 2 layers, and we're going to line it up so the dot is in the center of the strap, and the line that we drew is lined up with the edge of our fabric. And that way we know it's nice and straight, and it's exactly where we want it to be. And because it's a little bit chunky, I find it easier just to use a clip to hold that in place. Oopsie, it moved. So just lining it back up again and clipping. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew around the edge, but we need to leave an opening. Now if you're going to remember to leave an opening, by all means just sew. But if you think you might forget, we can just draw one on the side here. I'm going to do it, say 1.5 inches away from that edge, and then do another marking here. It's about 2.5 inches, I guess. So we'll start here, sew around and stop here. And I've just done it away from the side with our little D-ring on it. So you can't see it, but I've got my foot sitting right on top of that first little marking we did. I'm going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I've lowered my stitch down to a 2.5. So I'm going to go forward a few stitches, and then I will do a back stitch, because I find that when you turn it right sides out, it tends to pull at those stitches. So now I'm just going to sew along the edge. Coming up to the corner, I'm just going to do my best guess at a 1/4 inch away from that edge there. Make sure my needle's down and turn, and repeat that until I get back down to my marking, the second marking that is. Just removing that clip and holding it in place, and we can just stop and pause and make sure we're happy with how it's sitting before we sew over it. So just make sure you're happy. I'm just going to sew right over the top, and then I'm just going to do a back stitch back over it, and now I'm just going to carry on, and that's just going to make it extra secure. Coming up to that second marking, just sewing right up to it. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be exact. Doing a back stitch again and cutting my thread. Now on all the corners, I'm just going to trim the excess off, being careful not to cut the stitches. I'll just cut the top off that top corner piece there. And the little bit of excess there that's sticking out from our strap, I just leave it there. It doesn't cause any problems, but I guess if you'd like to, you could trim that. Now what we're going to do is turn it right sides out. So I'm just going to find the opening, and I put my fingers in and grab a corner and then pull it through the opening. We want to get it sitting the best we can. And then I'm going to use my point turner, or you could use a chopstick or something similar. And we just want to get it sitting really nicely. And I'm just going to run the point turner along all the edges. I do find that just helps to get it sitting nicely. And then what I'm going to do is give that a press. So the first thing we're going to do is find our opening. And what we want to do is make sure that this edge here is folded in about 1/4 inch, because that was our seam allowance. And then we want to press We want it to look like that opening was never there. Then what I'm going to do is just check all the edges and make sure they're rolled out. We want it to just be sitting really nicely, and then when we're happy, we'll press. It's helped that I use that point turner to run along the edge. It's all looking pretty good to me, so I'll just press. Checking our top point. That looks great too. Okay, I'm just going to give it a once over, because if you watch my videos, you'll know I love pressing. Okay, let's move on to the next step. So now with our lining side facing us and our D-ring to the left-hand side, it doesn't really matter what side the D-ring's on, that's just my preference. We're going to take this bottom edge and fold it up, and we want to fold it up about 2.5 inches. So I'm going to take my ruler, place the edge of that bottom there, well, the edge, it's the bottom that we folded up. I'm going to place that on the edge of my ruler. Find 2.5 inches on the ruler and make sure it is folded up 2.5 inches. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but that looks great to me. Then what we're going to do is just clip it in place, or you could use pins. I just find clips easier. And now what we're going to do is we're going to sew along the bottom edge, around the top, and then back down to the bottom edge. And we're not going to worry about sewing it along this folded bottom edge here. So now we're going to sew with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Again, use whatever foot you need to do that. I'm using my left compensating foot, and I've put my stitch length back up to 3. So I'm just going to start on the very edge. I'm going to go forward a few stitches, and then I will do a back stitch down to the bottom edge, and then I'm going to carry on around, removing my clips as I need to. I'm just going nice and slow because we don't need to rush, and then that way I'm going to get a really nice finish. Coming right down to that bottom fold, then again I'm going to do a back stitch, cut my thread, and now I'm just going to trim those loose threads there and tidy it up a little bit. So we're just going to fold down our top here and press it so it's sitting nicely. But when we fold it down, I personally don't like to fold it right down on the top edge of our pocket. I like to leave about 1/4 of an inch, and I just do it by eye. I don't measure it or anything. I make sure that both sides are lined up nicely, and that looks about right. And then I will just give it a press. And I'll press it on this side as well. So now we're going to do our snaps. Now what you need is snaps, the pliers and the awl, and this comes in a set for around $20, and you'll also get a whole lot of spare snaps in lots of different colors, and it's a great investment. I'll put a link down below if you'd like to get one. I think you'll find you love making these little snap pouches, and there's other projects you can make with them too. I'll put links down below with any projects that I have used snaps. Now what we're going to do is measure where we would like our snap to be. Now we've got a little pointy bit there, and I'm going to press it down, marking where I want it to be. And I want it to be just above the stitches and in the center. And I find if I just try to do that by eye, it doesn't go so well. So I'm just going to measure the middle, and it should measure 4.5 inches. And then half of that is 2.25 inches. So I'm just going to find 2.25 inches on my ruler, make sure I'm in the middle there, find that point, make sure it's lined up approximately in the middle with the ruler, and also where I want it to be in relation to the stitches on my pouch here. So that looks pretty good. I'm just pressing it down, so it's going to create an indent. Can you see that? It's like almost created a little hole, and that's where I'm going to use my awl to go through. So I'm just going to take my awl and pop it through that hole, coming out the other side and being careful not to accidentally stab myself. Okay, so we've come right through the other side. Then what I'm going to do is take my cap, or the top of my snap, and pop it in through the top. Then I'm going to take my socket piece and place that on top, so it's sitting there nicely. Then I'm going to take my pliers, and I'm just going to place those right on top and give it a real good squeeze. Now you're going to kind of expect it to click or something, but it doesn't, because it's just plastic. It kind of just mushes in there. And now if I try to pull it off, I can't because it's nice and secure. Now what I'm going to do is just fold it back down, and I'm just going to press really firmly again to make a marking where I'll put my second snap. So just pressing down, and then can you see I've got a little indent there showing me where I need to put my second snap. So what I'm going to do is again take my awl, pop it through and push it all the way through the layers, but I want to make sure I don't actually come through onto the other side. We just want to pop it through this first part of the pocket. So just going through carefully, and you can see I've done it there. So removing the awl, then I'm going to take my snap, but this time I'm going to come in through the back. This can be a little bit fiddly, and just push it through. We want to push it all the way down. We want to really see that pointy piece coming through. Then I'm going to take my stud and pop it on top. Then I'm just going to take my pliers again, put it right on top of that snap and press firmly. And do give it a really good firm press. And there we have it. If I pull at it, it's really nice and secure. And then if I push down, whoop, we have our snap. And then putting it back down again. There we go. We've got our little snap pouch. Isn't that just adorable? So I hope you enjoyed my new version of my snap pouch tutorial. Don't forget, you don't have to add that D-ring on if you don't want to. You could just skip that whole bit. And I'll put chapters in the video so you can do that easily. Now, I think these make great gift ideas, and I think they're so much fun to make. I'm sure once you try one, you'll make many. And if you prefer PDF patterns, I also do have a pattern over on my Etsy shop. I'll put a link down below. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.